This is the Moodboard podcast, and this is episode 11. My name is Caesar,
And I'm Aaron.
and we are two creatives helping others unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversations. So, in today's episode, we would like to talk about a little bit to 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 reinforce the inspiration chapter in terms of what it takes to find sources of ideas or things that trigger new ideas. And Aaron and I this week we were deep diving into an eBay seller profile. And how we got there is because I was shopping for a poster for my apartment, and I decided to see more about the seller's profile because I was very intrigued by the kind of poster they were selling. So I was wondering, do they have more of this kind of posters? Um, and I came across a gold mine of inspiration, visual inspiration. And
Yeah.
I had to share with Aaron, and I say, hey, check this out. So we
Yeah.
wanted to deep dive into these spontaneous moments when inspiration hits, and then talk a little bit more about what do you do when you have all these ideas or like all these sources of inspirations in your hand. Um, so just to
Yeah.
wrap up this thought, Aaron and I, we started sharing what we saw, what we liked. And Aaron, I wanted to hear your thoughts about this kind of scenarios and how to make the best use of it.
Yeah. When you sent me that account, it got me thinking like how when you think about inspiration, or when most people think about looking for inspiration, you don't really imagine, going to eBay. You're kind of like either Google Images or, Pinterest or Arena, all these different places that are typically thought about as like places where people share what they find. But the eBay account is so cool because, one, the seller has to curate what they are putting out there and showing the world. And so that is already very valuable, even if you're not intending to purchase anything. It's just a great visual treat, especially with these poster design. They were historical, they were just vintage and really, really cool to look at, just how much artistry is involved in poster design. And it got me thinking about going to the antiquarian book fair last year. And in New York City, there's this like annual antiquarian book fair that is really cool because it's just so many like people and booksellers from all over the world have come to New York City, and they have repurposed, or they sort of take over the there's an armory or some huge building on the, I think, Upper West Side or East Side, West Side. And when I went in, it was my first time, and it was really cool because they not only have books, they have other vintage things and just interesting stuff like maps, books that I never would have imagined, like things that should be in museums, right? There was this piece of music that Mozart wrote, and it was there, and it was like, I don't know how much, like, I think it was like maybe 300,000 or something like that, which is crazy to think that something of this historical importance has a price tag on it. That's kind of what got me thinking. There was a book by Copernicus, and many other consequent, like really important books that were available for purchase, obviously for $2 billion, nothing big, nothing crazy. But there was just so much visual inspiration there. And it's unexpected to think that at a book fair, I think, you could find so much graphical, visual inspiration. And so when you sent me this eBay account, I got to thinking like, wow, this is such a great digital alternative to going to the antiquarian book fair.
Yes, totally. And we want to encourage our audience to be open to these moments and to be open to wherever you go. You never know what you might find, what you might see, and just to be not always looking, but be attentive to what if you capture something, if something catches your attention, is for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And a pattern that I have found in terms of success, when you do something, or like when you, let's say, we can say that when you are curating your portfolio, when you're curating work, or even your idea, curation is very important, because I have found this pattern that, okay, there are all these stores that sell the same thing. A lot of sellers profile sell posters, but the selection of what posters you sell is what attracts the person or appeals to the person to come to you every time, because you have a particular selection process to decide to, like, hey, I'm gonna put this poster on my site, and if I'm putting it, it's because I believe that it's cool. And you can blindly trust this seller's profile that whatever you get there is of quality, visual quality. And I think about, if you decide to venture onto anything, that we have to be very good at curating.
Yeah.
Whether we're selling something that already exists, or curating in terms of what you select to do, what you select to show. That's very important, because that in a way will highlight your personality, will highlight your skills, your expertise. And that's why I was fascinated by this seller's profile on eBay, which, by the way, for your record, it's called Posters Please.
Yeah.
Posters Please on eBay.
I was about to say we should share the name of the account.
Yeah. Yeah, we should share the link at the end,
Yeah.
in the comments, or
Put a little link in the description. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
your taste can make a huge difference in terms of opening up opportunities, signaling to the right people, or to the people that you want to work with, developing that taste, surrounding yourself with, because I try to be very mindful of like what objects I bring into my space, both physically and digitally. There's times where I'll prefer a software because, it's cleaner, it just does one thing, versus a piece of software that does everything. And I think each one of those actions is an exercise of taste and decision making, and that's what ultimately what design is, right? You're packaging in a product a set of decisions. You've had to say yes to, certain things and no to others in order to produce what you did. And it just goes back to curating, right? To curating decisions. And I think it's just so important to be surrounded by things that align to those principles that you're setting for yourself. I don't know what you think about that.
No, that's a great point. And it makes me think about why the entertainment industry, or to be specific, celebrities surround themselves with stylists. Stylists
Yeah.
offer their client, which is often a celebrity or influencer, a number of options to choose from that is within that is within their interests, that is within their aesthetic, what they like, what they enjoy. But the stylist curates your choices. And also a good stylist should be able to articulate or like think ahead what you're gonna be into,
Yeah.
to help them curate and create this image that they're gonna, be seeing, and the paparazzi is gonna capture. So when you think about aesthetics, when you think about product creation with that angle, I think it opens up some, questions and just different ways of approaching product creation. Because you start, often the choices we make depends on the choices that we had at that moment, the options that we had at that moment. Because it's not, let's say, sometimes it's not like lack of willingness that you're not doing something, is that, hey, you didn't have the choice to do that. Otherwise, I would have done it. But, these were the other two choices that I had, and I decided to go with those two choices that I had at that moment in time. So, with that being said, when we are going through the creative process,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're creating by ourselves, other times we're creating in a team environment, which I think the team environment happens more often than on your, being by yourself. But when you are working on a team environment, it is important to curate the ideas that you present, because
Right.
that it's gonna highlight your confidence in your work, the confidence in your expertise, to say, hey, I know enough to know that this is the best idea to move forward with, or the two ideas to move forward with. But I think when you present, unless you're like exploring, that's fine, the more the better. But
Yeah.
if you're starting to narrow it down, like, don't keep presenting 10 ideas, don't keep presenting 5.
Do you
Present at the most 2.
do you ever
One
feel?
that fits the brief. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just gonna say, present one that meets the brief, and present maybe another one if you strongly believe in it,
Yeah.
what the product should be. But I wouldn't present more than 2 ideas.
I heard from like someone shared this with me a couple years back, and it really it gave me really like a good framework to sort of to riff off of what you just said, where you present 3 options, and it's called the ABZ method. And it's like, A is what the client asks for, B, what you think the client is asking for, and then Z is the complete wild card, the thing that you would do if you had no sort of limitations.
Restraints.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Sort of the option that you would do if you were the one in charge. And I think it's a really cool framework to play off of. But the question that I was going to ask you when I interrupted you earlier is, as you're curating your ideas to present to a team or whatever situation you're in, do you ever feel like you will overlook something and um like someone will see it, right? They'll like, you'll see all your sketches somewhere out there in the background. They'll be like, hey, show me that one that you didn't show me before. Has that ever happened, or do you ever feel like that um it is a scenario that you have to watch out for? Maybe like you don't see something, but someone else does.
Yeah, and I think, yes, that has happened to me. And I think that's the beauty of the creative process when you add, other people to the mix, and it becomes this like a suspense story, this thriller where you don't know what's gonna happen. And yes, I've had many scenarios where I present ideas and the one that I least expected gets chosen. And I'm just surprised, but then I'm also like, okay, I'm gonna trust this person that they're making, a sound decision, that this is the best idea moving forward, and I'm gonna make that idea that they chose the best. I'm gonna execute it at the to the best of my ability.
Mhm.
And and through that process, I think is beautiful to see how humans can work together, because it feels like this exercise. I forgot the name of the exercise, but it's like 3 sections and 3 different people work in each section, but you agree on the points where you're gonna connect. So like someone does the head, someone does the body, and then someone does the legs, or yeah, the rest of the body. But they do it in different styles, but because they all agree on connecting at certain points, then when you put it together, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
So in a way, I like when the creative process is open ended, like in within your scope of work is open ended, but you agree to the certain deliverables that allows the other person to then take on the next chapter. But they're meeting you, at the point that you guys agree on, and they meet you there, and then they do their part, and then they hand it off to the next person, and then that person uh does the rest of the work. But when you look, and then the project is done, but then when you look at it, is these 3 entities that are on their own, but that they are still connected. um I'm gonna look up, and then
Yeah.
maybe in the comments I will drop off the name of this kind of exercise. But I often see the creative process very similar to that exercise. And it's a good uh, project and approach, because it allows for each creative in the team, or each member in the team, to be themselves, but to also deliver what's needed for the other person to do their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and yeah, and then at the end, it's a product that truly has the DNA of all the people involved in the project, and you run with it. I think sometimes it's also important to, like, okay, we are at a stage where the product is good enough. Let's now try to figure out how to sell it. I don't
Yeah.
think the product has to be perfect for you to release it, or to go to market.
Yeah.
I think marketing plays a little bit there, to put the product in the best light possible.
Yeah.
And and I'm yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts about your your experiences with unexpected decisions throughout the creative process.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, have you seen, before I answer that, I was just gonna say, have you seen Get Back, the documentary about the Beatles?
No, I have not.
Okay, so this is like an 8 hour long documentary, and I watched it a while back, and it it really shocked me that this footage exists, right? Like I had no idea. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and I had no idea that this stuff existed. Um, and it was a really cool experience to see them, these four individuals, super talented people, coming together to do kind of like that exercise that you were just sharing with us, and how they each sort of balanced each other, and sort of ping-ponged ideas and contributed to each other's ideas. Seeing that documentary was a really, really good experience for me to kind of get behind, sort of become a fly on the wall of like this incredibly tight knit group of collaborators that created such impactful pieces of music, because it it sort of highlights one of the things that Steve Jobs would talk about, which is the desire to model his business and model the way he collaborated with people at Apple and the companies that he founded, like more like the Beatles, where everybody balances each other out. Like your strength are, my weaknesses, and etc. And so, um, being able to see that was really great. And so for anyone listening, if you want a masterclass of like collaboration and in the creative process, I highly recommend that documentary. But to go back to your question about unexpected sort of collaborations in the design process, I've had, um, I do have one recollection recently. Well, is a couple years ago. I was working on um, the cover for a book called The Network State, and this book it was about, or is about, this the concept that countries can be built online. And as we were working through the cover, it was there was already kind of like a vision that the author came to me with, and just during the process of collaboration, during the process of conversations, ideas would be exchanged. I would present sketches, and they would, they would come back with ideas, and we sort of uh, kind of like collage these different um, facets of what eventually became the cover. And so it was a different way for me to uh, design, because it was not just like, hey, we have this brief, um, come out with what what you have in mind. It was a very like tight collaboration, right? It was a lot of ideas sort of happened through conversation, and it was surprising for me because it was a completely new way of approaching uh, like in illustration design. Um, but with that being said, that's what I find fascinating and addictive about the creative process, that you're constantly learning something new in the process. It's like you understand that the process in the beginning, you kind of have a seed of the idea of what you want to do. You do your research, you develop a concept or a set of concepts, you decide what direction to take, and then you refine it, and you continue, you run into issues, and then you run into more issues, and then you run into a bigger issue, and then eventually you make a breakthrough, and you're finally getting closer to the final design. But throughout that process, there's always these learning opportunities that happen, especially when you add that additional unpredictable variable of human, the human element, right? Of that comes with being in a team. And yeah, it's just, I mean, that's why we're in this game, right? Like, it's just, we're curious, we want to learn, and it's just fascinating to see people work. One thing that came to mind as well, Caesar, is that when you're presenting work, I've heard this piece of advice throughout the years is like, never present something that you don't want them to pick, and always when presenting, I've also heard this piece of advice that when you're presenting, you want to kind of have a design that's kind of like the sacrificial piece, where you want them to reject that one so that you kind of steer them to the one that you're most excited about. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a very interesting approach, because it reminds me of like a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
Like, I'm presenting you something, but in reality, there is something else coming.
Yeah, I can see that.
And
for sure. It's like a hidden agenda.
Yes, that's interesting, because that reminds me of, like, I don't know if it's conspiracy theory or how true this is, but there is this word in the streets that it would be funny, us mysteriously getting canceled, or like our
Oh no, what are you gonna say?
podcast getting taken down. But what I'm gonna say, but
something
no, there is
controversial.
this theory. Yeah, no, there is this theory about tobacco companies were the ones who created the vapes or the jewels,
Mm-hmm.
and it became highly popular throughout a young demographic. However, now there are studies saying that juuling or vaping is bad. So the demographic that was vaping is going back to tobacco, because it's seen as or perceived as a natural, way of smoking.
Wow.
So they created something. So the theory is that they created that so that they could gain back the credibility or the reputation.
Oh, I see.
That, hey, smoking a cigarette is not as bad as you might think.
I see.
Because you're smoking a leaf, is organic, I don't know, whatever.
It's organic.
It's coming from the earth.
Yeah.
It's coming from the earth, whatever. So it's interesting approach that sometimes these entities create a problem to help people sway them back into their, product, or make them believe that, hey, we are not as bad as you thought we were. You were using that worse. Smoke something natural, cigarettes, fine. So
that's really interesting. We should have, I think we should have in the future an episode of where we talk about how design can package, design and marketing can package something in that we know is not like healthy for you, and just like the power that it had to just like package it in a way that you just like, ooh, I want that. I mean, because you look at the design.
It also reminds me of. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that you look at the design of
if you look at design.
the design of the jewel and you hold it in your hand, it's like, it's so sleek. They really did like add that, uh, the- how do you say, they approached it from a design.
Apple Touch.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, how do we make this thing sexy? And how do we make it compact? How can we make it like not have an odor? Um, it, how do we make it look like it's not out of place next to your phone? And so the power that that has to create desirability, and then you add nicotine on top of that, it's just like, it's a match that's optimized for, pleasure and reward anyway. But it just got me thinking about the power that design can have for empowering and also kind of like creating dependency and you know we're like, we're just making an objective observation here. We're not casting judgment. We're just saying like that is the way things are done. Desire is created through great design and through great marketing.
Yes, and a great shape.
Yes.
No, I was just gonna quickly say about also this other scenario where, similar in a similar fashion type of approach where you create a problem, but then you create the solution to the problem. So like you are controlling everything that happens.
Mhm.
Um, so the example that I'm thinking is the antivirus McAfee.
Okay.
Didn't he invent the computer virus?
Did he?
And
I didn't know.
then all of the sudden,
That's
I think I've heard
interesting.
something along those
Is
lines.
that another
And
conspiracy?
then he's like, I think it's a fact.
Oh, okay.
But
Don't trust,
yeah,
verify.
he, he created the virus, but then he created, I happen to sell the antivirus.
Yeah.
So it's it's an interesting approach to how, so I mean these people go to the extent
Yeah.
of creating something, like making you believe that you need something, or like, hey, um
Right.
yeah, just go to the extent of changing our habits and behavior so that they can benefit from that. They create these problems so that they can benefit from creating the solutions to the problems they create.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, I like, on the topic of shoes, let's like talk about shoes there for a second. Because I had a trainer who was always recommending getting the shoes with the the, the toe. I'm not sure what they're called.
Oh, the five fingers,
Yeah,
five
the
fingers.
fingers. Yeah, yeah. Um, because he was making the case that shoes sort of change the natural shape. Some shoes change the natural shape of the foot. That the foot is supposed to be able to like grit onto things, and most people have very weak feet because we're always wearing shoes. And it got me thinking about like uh, the Tarahumara Indians, native in Mexico, who are like known for running great distances, right? And they're not wearing the type of running shoes that typically are seen by, or are worn by runners. Please check this. I have read a bunch of stuff, and I'm not sure if I'm recalling this correctly, but the going back to the topic of creating a desire for something by saying, for example, like, hey, look, your feet are these, delicate limbs that you could, step on a piece of glass, step on a rock, and step on something and you could get hurt. So the solution is this great shoe that you can wear. And so just going back to this idea of like design is kind of, it is always solving something. And in order to solve a pain point, you first have to identify that pain point and then, present that product as the solution. I don't know if that made sense, but I just thought I'd share that quick one.
No, that's a great point, because I feel like often just design the purpose of design is solving a problem to make our lives better through either a service or a product.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I feel like, using the footwear as an example, we have gone from, hey, we're a brand that is creating a product to protect your feet from the elements that also will allow you to walk farther without getting tired or having pain. So we've gone from offering, from covering just the needs that we have, which is, protecting your feet. I think most people just need, like, foot protection,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
by making a shoe. That, that product, the answer to a question happens to be a shoe.
Right.
And we've gone from that to comfort, to a feeling. Oh, where this shoe is gonna make you feel this way. Where this shoe is gonna help you run, but it's gonna help you run faster.
Mm.
So that's when we start adding, you know, marketing, and we start adding, like, self-esteem. We're like, oh, if
Yeah.
you wear this shoe, you're gonna feel better about yourself.
Right. Right.
If you wear this shoe, that means you belong to this elite class of people. And I think in general, that's, I think it's important to look at advertising and study advertising about how how these agencies or entities create the notion that if you buy this product, you're gonna feel better, you're gonna be better, you're associated with a set of values that is making you believe that you're, I don't know, better person, better athletes, or do you have a better sense of style?
Yeah.
And so that's when we have to also look at not only the creative process, but the creative process around, okay, how we're gonna create, how we're gonna play with people's emotional strings to help them believe that this product, that you need this product. And I think, a company that has done a great way at making you believe that you need a new product every year is Apple, where the way they sell you, their services and products is that, hey, this product that we're coming up with, it's better than the one before, and it's gonna help you, I don't know, be better at what you do, be more efficient at what you do. You need this product because it's gonna make your life easier.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to explore with you this side of this conversation where, we talk about advertising, we talk about,
Mm-hmm.
well, we often talk about Mad Men,
Yeah.
which I love the pitches that they do throughout the show. And let's deep dive a little bit into the,
Sure.
you know how to sell a product successfully.
Yeah. Madman's a great example. I think for anyone looking for a good, you know, show, good writing, There's a lot of great lessons in there. Highly recommend it. Um, and one of the things I picked up from just watching, I watched it recently, rewatched it. The first time I didn't really, I think it was, I was in high school or something like this, and I wasn't really up to speed with a lot of things. And watching it the second time was a big benefit. And a lot of the times when we're working in design, at least early on, we're so focused on the craft and like getting better at becoming designers. And later on, you realize that when you are designing something, it doesn't matter how great the design is if no one knows about it. And that's where marketing comes into play. And one of the things that I picked up from just studying Johnny Ive, the former head of industrial design at Apple, and like his collaboration with Steve Jobs when Steve was still around, is that they both understood the power of starting with what are we selling here? What are we solving? Because that marketing is telling the story, right? Advertising is telling the story of this product, of what it's going to do for you. Now, this can be done with a malicious intent, advertising cigarettes, for example, knowing that they cause lung cancer, etc., and they have health repercussions. Or it could be done, in a much positive light, or for a much more positive cost. So there's, double-sided things. It's a double-sided situation, maybe. But one of the things that I really like to keep in mind when working on anything is, what's the story? Because that story is going to, be the thing that sparks it, and it's also going to be the thing that takes it from the shelf into the person's hands, right? And it's very important that as designers, I think we understand business models, and we really try to deep dive into business, because business it's a collection of different disciplines happening at once.
Agree.
Yeah. What do you think,
Yes.
Caesar?
No, that's a very good perspective, because it brought to my mind the importance of again curating what you say, how you market something. And I think no matter what you do, no matter where you are in your career, you're always, selling your ideas or trying to persuade people that your ideas are better or good enough that you should act on them. Because everything starts with an idea. And it's important for us to be mindful of what we say, how we sell, how we pitch something, that we are, not only staying true to ourselves, to the product that we're working on, that we're creating, but also appealing to the person we're selling this product to. And often, this person that we're trying to that is trying to approve our work, it's a manager or a creative lead, and in that sense, that's selling. And it makes me think that we have to put things in such a way that uh, what you do touches on an emotional side of you, and to help people put themselves in your shoes so that they can better empathize with what you want to do or say, and see your intentions, and have this transparency. And a product that I'm thinking about, that there was nothing wrong about the product, There was nothing wrong. It was, the product has remained the same, I think, since it was created, or maybe minor tweaks here and there, but the essence of the product has been the same from the moment it was created. However, when it was created, it wasn't popular. And all it took was a change of, a phrase or a sentence on the product that told you what the product does versus what the product is. And this product that I'm talking about is Listerine. Listerine
Ooh.
wasn't called Listerine. Well, I know, I think it was called Listerine, but what followed was the real chemistry composition of it, and that was like the subtitle of the product, like Listerine, and then like, I don't know, alcohol peroxide,
Something
I don't know,
random.
something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, a long word that sounded like toxic, that sounded,
Gary.
a chemical. You don't want to put a chemical in your body. But the way they got around that block that kept product from being successful was the subtitle, the phrase or like the tagline that went
Yeah.
along with the brand. So then it became, instead of Listerine and then the substance that is in that product, it became Listerine.
Mouthwash.
Helps you
Something.
fight
Wow.
bad breath.
Yes. Helps you
It
fight
was for bad breath.
Wow.
So then that change on those words and that changing perspective changed the perception of the product, and then like people was more self-conscious of like, oh well, I don't want to have bad breath, I need this, so they would buy the product.
Wow.
And that's how they got, that's how the product took off. But it just took a change in perception.
Yeah.
Um
I was going to add to that, Caesar, that you just highlighted something that took me many years after graduating to find out, which is the importance of great copy, the importance of getting the name of the product right. That's why people pay, millions of dollars to get a name like BlackBerry, right? To get a name like iPod, and etc. And going back to just like summarizing what the product does at the start, because that is what the design's going to deliver, and that's going to be the major selling point. That's why, like, I admire so much of what Steve Jobs did at Apple, because he understood how to sell and he understood design. And so by merging those two, he was able to create just this powerhouse of name brand recognition and ultimate customer joy. Like one example is like the iPod. There were plenty of music players out there. There were most of them were very difficult to use, et cetera, et cetera. But that one line, 1,000 songs in your pocket, it provided the template for the designers, and it provided the template for the marketing team to sell it really well.
and also the perception of Apple was like a cool brand that people wanted to be associated with. They're craving to be associated with, and whatever they do, oh, I want to have it because I want to be cool. And it's funny you bring the iPod example, because Simon Sinek on the Start With Why TED Talk brings up Apple as like a great marketing example of starting with why. And he uses Apple as the example for his TED Talk, and he points out that, like, yes, there were, when the iPod came out, there were other MP3 players, which Apple didn't call the iPod an MP3 player; it was called an iPod. reinforcing your point of like the importance of naming something properly, naming something that is catchy, uh, naming something that sounds cool. And so, yeah, Simon Sinek said that, like, yes, there were a lot of MP3 players that were technically better than the iPod, but no one could match or no one could sell something the way Apple did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Powerful
that's,
stuff.
that, yes. And then I also wanted to segue into this other example of like the importance of like the vision that it takes to articulate this and to be able to see like the success ahead of time and the success that this could have. um I was watching the movie The Founder, the story about how McDonald's started. And at the end of the document, without spoiling, the movie, it's not a documentary. The end of the movie, the guy asks him like, why were you so set on taking the McDonald's name? Like, why do you want it so bad? Why couldn't you call it something else? And he simply said like, I just like McDonald's the way it sounds.
Wow.
And it sounded like it sounded cool. It didn't sound gimmicky. Uh, it wasn't. It wasn't also. Which, think about it. The success of products is when some of the success of products don't rely on them being titled what they do, but being titled by their character, by the character of the product.
Yeah.
So like iPod wasn't titled an MP3 player, it was named an iPod. McDonald's wasn't titled a burger joint, it's McDonald's.
Yeah.
McDonald's can be anything that they want McDonald's to be without being attached to a product.
Yeah.
And this is the importance of like, when you are creating a product, when you are creating a brand, to give the brand like human like features so that we can better connect with the brand. Because we humans seek for humans. So I think if we can have a brand or a product that has human like features or like a human like approach, um I think people has a stronger emotional connection to it, and higher chances that whatever you do will be successful.
Yeah. It's interesting that even with brand, there exists an element of personality, and that in naming things, there's an entire like people who this is their craft and they dedicate themselves to branding and naming products and personality. What does what is the product or the brand's personality? That if they were a person, who would they be? Fictional or realistic person. Like, who do they most match with? And that I know that helps guide them in the process of making, again, curating decisions. Is this brand strong? Is it humble? Is it very positive, or is it very like realistic? What are what's the temperament like? There's a book called Bill, and it was written by Tony Fadell. Tony Fadell is given the title of father of the iPod. He was the one that spearheaded the iPod, and this book is really valuable for people building early on middle stage of their career, wherever you are, this book will has something for you. It's been very beneficial for me because it talks about what we're talking about right now. In addition to the notion of going for ideas or going for product, designing for pain, like not creating vitamin products, things that people can do without, but really focusing on products that are painkillers that really solve something that's just upsetting or really just like a pain that you didn't realize you had because it just becomes such a part of your life, right? And all of this to say that this world of advertising, of branding, of marketing, it's fascinating to go into. And I think as a designer, it's super valuable to understand the language that that comes with it and the process that comes with it. Because I think it does make you an even better designer, because a lot of what we do is curating and editing and removing excess and really focusing on the task at hand. What is the customer's goal? What is keeping them from reaching it? And how does my or our product solve that and help them reach their ambitions and their goals or whatever it is that they're striving for. I'm so glad that we like hit these topics. These are like really, really valuable points. And I haven't watched
Yeah,
The Founder, but I need to.
you should. I believe it's on Netflix, or it was on Netflix,
Okay.
and it is on YouTube for sure because I bought the movie.
I,
I watch it often when I need like a creative boost,
yeah.
and every time I see it, I can see something, I can get something else out of it, and I love it. It's one of those movies that I keep coming back to. And since we're talking about advertising, and advertising, in other words, is psychology related, because it has to do with the conversation that goes on in our minds. I think it is important to point out that we should, if you want to deep dive into it, that we should study Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud and his son, because they they came to the United States from Germany, because they were in charge of the like propaganda in in Germany, you know, to recruit, to convince people that of ideologies, things like that. But because they were, Sigmund Freud was a psychologist and understood human mind, he was able to curate messages
Yeah.
that were highly persuasive. So after coming to the States and then working on advertising, you know, that's at the level that advertisement operates. It's human psychology. And another person that I have the opportunity of meeting, and it's a great um, it's a great person that understands, well, human's mind and human psychology, uh, and understands consumerism and how we understands how we consume. His name is Robert Walker, and he has a book that I've read that's been very insightful about the conversations that go in our mind before we purchase something, or before we, he studies why brands create, or why people become brand loyalists. And it's a very interesting way to dissect how he does it on his book called Buying In. Buying In, uh, which you can find it on Amazon for like, I don't know, $7, $10. It's a great book to have a deeper understanding of why people become, you know, why people tattoo Harley Davidson on their arm.
Yeah, that's
Why
strong.
people go to that extent of loving something so much that, you know, an example like Converse and artists and being attached to like music and like rebellious behavior. Like, why is there like, it makes someone, let's say, oh, all I'm gonna buy and wear is Converse. All I'm gonna drink is PBR. You know, what what makes humans become so loyal and attached to something that makes them change their behavior, their habit, their culture? These brands become cultures.
Yeah,
So he dissects and studies that on his book in his book.
that's cool. Yeah, I find that really fascinating. Even like as like let's just take for example like food. Like 10 years ago, I feel like I was, very into this like hot wing joint that was in Savannah. And so I got really into like hot wings there. But like moving forward, like a few years later, like I'm not really like into that as much anymore. But the maybe that's not the greatest example. I think what I'm trying to get to is like uh I have a better example. I was talking with my partner about like how much she likes Papa John. And I'm like, we have incredible pizza here, like incredible pizza. Why is it that you will sometimes go back to that particular pizza brand? And it made me think that it's because we tend to associate it with a time in our lives and it becomes sort of nostalgic. So it's like loyalty presents itself in many different ways. And on the subject of loyalty, there's a quote in Mad Men that one of the agency owners gives. And he says, loyalty is born in mysterious ways. And I think that mystery is, I'm interested to read this book that you just recommended because it is sort of mysterious to the people that maybe don't study it. But I'm sure there is some kind of, psychological reasoning behind why we tend to select, again, curating. The topic of curating comes up again, saying this particular brand or product represent who I am or reinforces my identity. Therefore, I choose them over, this other one. And so we're in this world of uh, powerful messaging, man. Like it's really, I'm fascinated by it because it's it's so telling of us as human beings, what we decide to bring into our worlds and what that says of our society, of our facets of culture. It speaks volumes what we decide to kind of keep and signal to the world that this is who I am. The car that I have is an avatar. Do you remember in Objectified, the BMW, I think it was like a BMW CEO was talking about how cars are like avatars for people. So that's really interesting. Do you have any more thoughts, Caesar, or what do you think? This was a great conversation, I think.
I don't, but I think it's a good. I think we're at a good place where we provided enough information to hopefully trigger um people's interest here, our audience interest. Um, we don't want to run out of steam either, but give you enough to run with something. And I just want to close with this thought in regards of like, I think as designers and creatives, if we can visualize how something is gonna be sold, how something is gonna be perceived, I think it helps you be clever. From a very from the very beginning, thinking about how something is gonna be perceived can help you throughout the decision making process to create something and to incorporate that DNA throughout everything that you do, so that at the end you get an authentic product that resembles that idea you want to sell, that you want to, for the world to see. And as designers, we shouldn't be foreigners to human psychology and to how we consume, because we need to understand what moves the needle, what makes people go crazy for something. And I think once we had experience, once we have a deeper understanding of what makes people buy something, makes people become loyal to brands, I think we can use that knowledge and apply it to making successful. I think in a positive way we can create positive movement, positive education material for people to take away with them and help them become better people, not just from a I don't want to sell an idea or the notion that you're going to be better by having what I create. I want to like truly you to be better, feel better by what I create,
Yeah.
on a tangible form.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And those are my closing thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with great power and understanding comes a lot of responsibility. And as designers, we have so much influence. We can have so much influence over uh, people's thoughts and desires. And I think it just our responsibility to make a positive impact on the world and show our love for humanity by making good decisions that empower people and make them feel good. So, yeah, I'm excited for the next one. Ready?
That was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is our
And
11th
we look
episode.
Yes, and I'm glad we are starting this new chapter, and we look forward to hearing our listeners' comments, ideas, and please let us know, what thoughts this podcast, kickstart or spark, and we would love to, engage with you in a conversation and ways we can, just do better or cover topics that you're really interested in.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you for tuning in. This was episode 11, and this is Caesar,
This is Aaron.
and we are two creatives helping others unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversations. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.
Until next time.